As you have clearly seen, this sectional chart gives you a lot of useful information, and sometimes it can give you life-saving information, because if you're doing any low-level flying at all, you'd like to know about certain things. These are things like TV antennas, tall buildings and towers, and they are called obstructions or obstacles, also called day ruiners if you're not careful. It's especially important to know about these in advance if you're flying low, like when you're doing, practicing your ground reference maneuvers. But they're not always easy to find on the chart. So let's find some and see how to identify these obstructions and obstacles. You see this upside down V with a dot in it? This is the symbol for an obstruction, or as the FAA sometimes calls it, an obstacle. It's something you do not want to hit. You'll see a couple of numbers below the symbol. The big number in bold tells you the MSL elevation of that obstruction. It tells you how high the top of the obstruction is above sea level. We call that the elevation of the obstruction. What's the elevation of this obstruction? Well, in this case, it's 3,588 feet MSL. On the other hand, what is the height of this obstruction? Well, you look at the lower number in parentheses, and that tells you what the height of the top of the obstruction is above ground level. In this case, it's 350 feet AGL. Now, here's what these numbers tell you. Let's assume you're flying along and you happen to hit the top of the obstruction. The bold number tells you what your altimeter will read when you hit that obstruction. And the little number in parentheses tells you how far you will fall to the ground. Take a look at this symbol. And remember, the basic symbol for an obstruction is an upside down V with a dot. Now we have this. This is the top of an obstruction that is at least 1,000 feet above ground level, and it will show with this Eiffel Tower type symbol. Now, if you wanted to know the height of this obstruction or obstacle, or how far you would fall to the ground, you would need to look at the AGL height, the number in parentheses. So this thing is 1,149 feet above the ground, or AGL. Notice that the lightning bolts on these obstructions appear on the chart. Now, does that mean that these obstructions will shock you if you get too close? No, not really. The lightning bolts will tell you that the obstruction is lighted. Now, let's take a look at this chart. Here is Lake Arrowhead. What is that flag symbol at Lake Arrowhead? Well, let me ask you a question. True or false? That's a golf course? No, that's not a golf course. You can't put a golf course in a lake, no matter how many balls you hit into the lake. The flag symbol points out what is called a visual checkpoint. Think of it as a visual reporting point. Now, it's not mandatory or compulsory to use, but it is very helpful when talking to the controller. That's because it's fair game for you to call up the controller and say, SoCal approach, this is Skyhawk 359er Echo Sierra, Lake Arrowhead. Because that flag is depicted on the chart, the controller is supposed to know where Lake Arrowhead is. On the other hand, that flag at Lake Arrowhead means that the controller can call you up and say, Skyhawk 359er Echo Sierra, report Lake Arrowhead. And because there's a magenta flag at Lake Arrowhead, you are supposed to know where Lake Arrowhead is and then report when you are over it. Let's take a look at this figure. I think this will get your attention. There's this little box right here, and it says, caution, unmarked balloon on cable to 15,000 feet MSL. And you'll find that it's attached to this location over here. And what they are telling you is that there is this cable with a balloon on the top of it up to 15,000 feet. The cable is unmarked, and the FAA calls this a hazard to aircraft. This isn't like a golf hazard. You don't lose 2 strokes if you hit this thing. This could be serious. let's take a look at what one of these looks like from the air. In this particular case, we're flying pretty high up. We're at 35,000 feet. And these balloons and these cables can go as high as 18,000 feet. Well, you see the balloon, but you can't see the cable. And they marked these obstacles on the chart because they thought you would want to know. And on behalf of all pilots, I want to thank them.